everyone. Welcome to the Blue Sky session at the Festival of Innovation. I'm Ella Baskerville, Blue Loop's Managing Director, and I'm pleased to be joined by Henry Kim, Creative Director at Forrec, and Virginie Valastro, Producer at Moment Factory. So thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So pleased to have you with us. So at the festival, we have a ton of great sessions, all talking about latest projects across various verticals in the business. But in this session, we'll be really talking about the challenge of designing the bleeding edge of attractions, concepts that are 5-10 years down the road, and really future-proofing them for success. So I thought we'd kind of kick off by getting a bit philosophical and talking, what does blue sky mean to you both? So I don't know who wants to kick off.
Henry, please go ahead.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I think for me, the first thing is I think blue sky means different things to different people. It can mean out of the box thinking, chasing that elusive big idea, or really, the initial spark of an idea. But for me, I've always thought that it's a mindset. It's really deliberately spending time in the realm of, what if, before letting the how slow the idea down. And really just thinking back, some of the most iconic attractions in our industry really began as ideas that sounded crazy and unrealistic at the time, like a trackless dark ride system, or a 3-minute long launch coaster, or an attraction where guests actively pilot the story instead of just sitting passively. And so to me, a blue sky mindset really means giving those blue ideas the time and permission to exist long enough to see where they might take us.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Virginie?
Well, I mean, exactly what Henry said. It's all the what ifs. It's gathering a bunch of our creatives and doing those creative brainstorms, and just what ifs. What if this? What if that? What could happen? On our side, multimedia as well. Often resonates with technology, and so we like to think of technology how it's meant to be used, and just think how it could be used differently. So repurposing things. Again, thinking outside the box about technology and what we could do else with it. And yes,
absolutely. So I think I want to kind of dig into some examples of where you have that starting point. So Henry, start with you. Where do you begin designing an experience? I know Forrec worked fantastically on Legoland Shanghai.
Mm-hmm.
As an example, maybe you could explain a bit about beginning that experience and what the process was from the starting point.
Yeah, great to bring that up. Personally for me, I always try to start, with context, both emotional and cultural, before actually jumping into the actual, design of the rides and master planning and things like that. With Lego Shanghai, that was especially important because we weren't actually involved in the earliest concept phase. Many of the core ideas actually were developed by Merlin before we actually came on board. Even then, I think thinking back, blue sky was critical. It allowed us to step back and ask, how those initial ideas needed to evolve, both culturally and be authentic in China. And within this context, blue sky thinking allowed us to think about, how do families play together? How do they move through the space, and what moments of wonder really, truly resonate? And from there, we could really begin the groundwork, start thinking about the brand, site, operations, and really turn it into something both, authentic and buildable.
Mm-hmm. It must be a real challenge with Legoland as well, because they're extremely successful all around the globe, but it's doing it different and new each time as well.
Exactly.
That was a real challenge.
Yes.
To plus it. Fantastic.
I think the point is that blue sky is never always a phase, or it's never always, at the beginning. It can happen, throughout the process, the entire process. And there's always elements and moments where you really need to think about a solution. And sometimes that solution just doesn't exist in a blueprint. So that's how I always approach every project.
I love that it's a continuous process. So what about you, Virginie? So obviously Moment Factory did fantastic work at the Curiosity Cove at Mandai. Maybe using that as an example, could you say where you begin? Where do you start with the project?
Yes, well, very similar to Henry. It's really understanding what the destination is, what are those cultural landmarks, what are those trends and tendencies in where the destination, where that experience is going to live, and then understanding how visitors, engage. What are they used to? And then we expand to like globally, what are the trends and tendencies in our industry? And then trying to, just mash up all of this together and see how we can develop new ideas and make them live in that territory. Yeah. And so about Curiosity Cove, what was interesting is that it was a project that spanned over 8 years. And of course, we had a few curveballs, like the pandemic halfway into the project. So, but yeah, projects like this that span over many years bring us sometimes to rethink, where are we at? What are we creating? And where do we want to bring it? Is it still the right purpose, the right emotion that we're bringing to the table? Is it, and what are the tools that we're using? So we really see technology as a tool to service the emotion. And so once we really have a strong idea and a strong story, then it's just seeing what the tools are there to elevate it.
Yeah, but that's the challenge, because the toolkit's changing.
Yes, they evolve and they change. But strangely, we realize that we rely a lot on old technology. Like, for example, we don't reinvent projection mapping, lighting, and audio, but it's the way we use them together as a choreography, or the way we bring ideas or just all the elements together. So innovation is not necessarily only in technology, as one would think, with multimedia, but it really lies in how we're telling the stories and how we're experiencing those moments together.
So. Yeah, absolutely. So I guess it's one thing to design something that's really innovative and future forward, but it needs to work in the real world, doesn't it? So the next kind of question I want to ask you both, the experiences you're creating, they're created before any guest ever sees it. How do you future-proof it for that change? So I guess you just touched on it in terms of technology. Is it about kind of choosing tech that has the bandwidth to evolve, or changing how we use that tech?
Well, I guess for me, in this day and age, you really just can't future-proof against technology. It's that it changes too fast, and for me, what I try to do is focus on timeless drivers like curiosity, connection, agency, and wonder, and then let technology become a layer to support these ideas rather than try to lead them. For me, a good example of this is really the resurgence of wooden roller coasters. They're making a comeback, not because they're super high tech, but because they're visceral and emotional. You feel the speed, the bumps, the shakiness. They deliver something raw and nostalgic. So for me, in my opinion, the more tech driven the world gets, I think the more we crave something that we can actually feel.
Mm-hmm. What would you add to that, Virginie?
Well, similarly, we don't rely on technology first, as I said earlier, and as Rennie pointed out. It's really about what it triggers in people, and what is that experience, and what do we want it to say or to bring into visitors and guests.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're designing, how early do we need to think about the kind of operational realities? Is that a conversation that's how early are you brought in often? I know you mentioned, Henry, that you were kind of brought in later on the Merlin conversations with Legoland, but is it something that you hit the ground running with?
Well, I mean, for me, every project's different. Merlin was one example. For me, operations absolutely always matter. You can't really design a park that's never going to run safely or efficiently, but early blue sky thinking, I think, needs protection sometimes from these operational constraints. If you bring operations in too soon, you start risking like running down ideas before they've actually had time to grow. I think for me, the key is timing. Once the big idea is clear, operations can actually become a partner, a creative partner. One constraint you might think about is ride queues, for example. They were once a constraint, and it was always this task of keeping guests occupied during long waits. But now that's an opportunity. Queues are now designed as part of the experience, layering in interactive storytelling and immersive environments. Constraints like these that can actually help push us create solutions that are both elegant and memorable. as well as efficient.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Do you have anything to add to that, Virginie?
Well, I mean, we often fall in the trap of of wanting to know about those operational constraints so that we understand better, or we design the best out of experiences, and we make the flow of visitors better, and details like that. But indeed, we get caught up very rapidly in excluding ideas that might, be relevant or become the big idea. So, but at the same time, like Henry said, it's constraint to help us force creative. So constraints are new boundaries where you just want to go over them, and you just want to try to find a way to go around them. And so that kind of brings new ideas to the table. So I'd say both of them are very valuable, constraints or no constraints, but it's being aware and not falling in the trap of being stopped by those constraints.
I love that.
Yeah.
Very good. I think that flows quite nicely onto the next question, which is all about kind of if there's planning assumptions that really could be reinvented in our industry. I mean, just thinking of things like guest flow, dwell time, and layouts and things like that. Is there anything that's kind of outdated now?
Well, for me, I think, in my opinion, like several, traditional planning assumptions, I think, are now really overdue for reinvention. Dwell time, as you mentioned, is, it's often truly treated as a, capacity metric, but it could actually be part of the experience itself, such as making, crush spaces interactive and layered, like I said before, or, guest flow is also another strong assumption. Instead of just simply moving people through the spaces efficiently, a blue sky approach can help, enhance discovery and anticipation. Rethinking these fundamentals, I think, for me, shows that, operational efficiency and creativity don't need to actually compete. They can actually complement each other.
Absolutely. And what about in Moment Factory's experience? Is there often, I guess, you're working for maybe more immersive experiences, kind of smaller footprint attractions as well? That must be even more challenging.
Yes, and we have to be aware that in the world that we live today, the attention span is just decreasing impressively, and so we have to ask ourselves, if even if this scene is about 4, 5, 6 minutes, 10 minutes, is it too long? Will we lose our guests' attention? And similarly, in interactive experiences that we develop, we have to find that, find balance of what will keep them engaged, for them to really fully enjoy and appreciate the experience. So this is definitely one of our first points to think about as we develop projects in our modern world.
Yeah. On that point, I guess for those types of experience where you're creating that interaction, how do you create that sense of intimacy and personal connection for a high throughput attraction?
That's a hard one, but I think Henry tapped on it a little bit when talking about roller coasters. It's all about triggering those emotions. I mean, at Moment Factory, our motto is really, our vision is doing it in public, and it's finding those ways to gather people together and experiencing those moments, those magical moments. And so how do you this, as you say, with high throughput is hard, but you need to find what will reach your visitors and your spectators. And I think that's really all about it. Whatever flamboyant technology you use, if it doesn't reach them, or if it doesn't trigger any sense of emotion, and you'll miss it. You'll miss the point, I think.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, because it's about triggering emotion and also kind of impact and like a lasting something that you can take away in either action. I think kind of gone are the days of kind of screensaver type experiences. It's got to kind of move you in some way, or inspire an action to come out of it.
Yes, and doing it collectively just increases the climax or enhances the experience. So it just brings it to a higher place. I think doing it collectively.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. I guess it's one thing to have a fantastic experience, great people interacting throughout the whole thing, but then another to get them to return again and again. So a question for you both is how do you design experiences so guests can repeat visit?
Well, for me, I think, the two things I try to look into are personalization and discovery. And I think those two things are what, turn an experience into something deeper, something worth repeating. Personalization, I think, for me, lets guests shape the experience themselves, adding in gamified elements, it makes them active participants and really encourages them to repeat the attraction or the experience. A good example outside of the industry is really, apps like, Spotify and Netflix. They adapt content to your behavior and really offer something new each time rather than just replaying the same playlist. So I try to apply these same principles, I guess, to when designing experiences. Personalization and discovery is for me what drive repeat engagement, and I think they really represent the future of our industry.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that, Virginie?
Well, I mean, it really depends on what type of experience we're confronted with. I think and also the level of guest engagement. And for us, guest engagement has an importance in an experience, because if it is a passive engagement where spectators are watching a show or watching media, then yes, what kind of content can we generate? Creating a content library that is diversified, that is themed or seasonal, that could be, used at different moments in the year to encourage that return of visitors. When we talk about interactive experiences, and as Henry mentioned, it's creating those different levels of gaming or added gameplay, or that will be able not only to satisfy the more passive visitors, but also the more active one, the younger generation who really wants to push themselves or to understand what's the next level, or a bit of a competition. And so we're able to add all those layers in an interactive experience.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And are you both kind of dabbling with AI and to do that kind of personalization? Are you starting to use tools like that in your experiences?
Are we talking about the beast that is AI? Henry, do you want to start?
I think it's inescapable. I think AI has sort of permeated all aspects of everything. I won't say society, but everything. But again, like I said before, technology shouldn't be driving, whether it's brainstorming or the actual, development and planning. AI is always a tool. For me, I always think about how, the digital camera, when that first came out, all the photographers were starting to, freak out and say, hey, this is going to take over the industry. It actually didn't. It actually made things easier for photographers to get better shots, and it just made it more efficient for them. So that's always been my thinking behind AI, but I guess there's varying opinions on that.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed, it's very polarized as an opinion about AI, and very strongly also on the creative, from the creatives. And so of course, like most companies now today, we have a department, an R&D department that learns to understand, to train AI, to how can we use AI positively in our industry. The reason why I say positively is because it can bring so much to the table. Like it can be a very rapid tool that will give you rapid iterations or rapid outcomes and ideas. But at the same time, once you want to refine an experience, once you get into iteration, this is where, our artists are essential to the creation of these experiences, because we want to make it perfect. We want to refine and iterate. And AI is not there yet to support that kind of iteration. And again, we have a team training the AI so that we can get the outcome that is closer to what we want. And same thing on the client side. Clients are, either very strongly positive about AI, about using AI in their experiences. Others are more cautious. And so we have to respect that, but we have to embrace it. And because it can bring amazing projects to life, where, the content is more generative, faster to be consumed. But when we want to have something that is more reliable, or that is in the details, that we will prefer to work with our artists.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really kind of exciting time, murky time, but there's lots of kind of great opportunities for it, like you say, in the guest experience and how they can deliver that personalization. Very exciting time. So I guess kind of the next kind of chunk of questions is really picking your brains on what you think really the future for products and growth areas of the industry are. So question for you both is, what technology, what products are you seeing for the future of the visitor attractions business? What's exciting for us at the moment?
Well, I think for me, I'd like to see technology, quietly adapt experiences in real time, really without calling attention to itself. I think, technology needs to be invisible. It really needs to take a back seat, and I'm imagining environments that, sense pace and crowd and energy and mood, and really, using technology to subtly respond through lighting, sound, and spatial changes. For me, a dark ride could just adjust, the lighting based on guest reactions. That would be such a cool thing. Or a queue area could really shift soundscapes and, depending on the guest flow, and really what I want to see is technology disappear. But once it can't happen, until we sort of start thinking about all the personalization, all that, all those experiences where immersion grows, and really, again, the experience feels truly personal.
Yeah. So you envisage a future where it will be scanning guest faces to kind of tone the scariness of something.
I think so. But then, obviously technology really needs to be hidden at that point, because, feeling that scan and that feeling of Big Brother is really something that I don't think we're wanting to see in our industry. So really feeling like things are less techy, but more interaction is really where I see the products I want to see in the future.
Fantastic. What about you, Virginie? I mean, Moment Factory, you are tech experts in everything. What are you most excited about?
Well, I mean, it's funny to say, we're always curious about new technology and new possibilities that are coming up technologically. However, again, it's how do we bring people together? It's really our core, North Star at Moment Factory. And so it's, Henry pointed out something super important, that for us, it can kill the magic. When you see technology, it just gets you out of the experience completely. And so that is definitely a point of guidance for us that we always follow. But I think I'd be curious to see the before and after, and seeing how the before, yes, there is an experience, but I think what is underdeveloped at the moment is how we can embark on that journey before and after, once we leave the experience, and what comes out of this, and what could be the trails of that. Yes, there's social media, but there's so much more. You could, it could be leverages of creating new environments that you join and you relive the experience differently digitally, or, so it's understanding those possibilities that kind of prepare you for the attraction or the experience, and then, what continues from it.
Yeah, how interesting. So it's kind of incorporating into the attractions marketing machine post and pre visit.
Perhaps, yeah. And building those worlds around it. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. How interesting.
Or following it, or, creating maps of, if you like this attraction, which one, where should you go next? And then that brings you on a world quest, for all of those immersive experiences. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah. And each point is a data point for the park as well. There's like real value in understanding where people want to travel and having that information beforehand as well.
And then just maybe collecting a bunch of people and giving yourselves rendezvous around the world, that could break barriers.
Yeah, interesting. No, I mean, with Disney's purchase of Fortnite as well, like I'm kind of wondering what they're going to do with that in terms of kind of a extended metaverse type experience. There's lots of potential for that kind of crossover for sure. So yeah, okay, next question really is looking at different verticals. So we obviously, themed entertainment reaches into all sorts of weird and wonderful corners, but I'm wondering if there's bits of the industry that you were seeing real growth in that might be less traditional theme park experiences. Is there anything that has caught your eye?
Yeah, I think for me, wellness is dramatically unexplored. I think it's not just about spas. I think it's about more the emotional and mental experiences, as places for respite and restoration. Our industry has spent a lot of time focusing on adrenaline, and spectacle. But what we haven't done is design enough for calm, and reflection and emotional recharge. I think about airports and transit spaces and as an opportunity, and the high stress, they're emotionally charged environments. And I think they can benefit from storytelling and thoughtful placing and moments of surprise and delight. I think the industry really has only started to scratch the surface in these spaces.
Absolutely. What would you add to that, Virginie?
Well, the fact that we have different market units at Moment Factory helps us cross over and share those ideas and innovative views about each of these different units and different markets. We are, developing a lot of projects in airports and transportation hubs. Same thing for outdoor nighttime experiences and in more parks and forests with our Lumina series. And so these are all markets and sports and events. Same thing with all the gaming and the events, and the IPs, honoring the IPs and integrating them into different canvases. So we are lucky to be exploring all of these canvases and markets already. And so sharing that information or those discoveries or those tests that we're doing, prototyping and, cross contaminating, should I say, the different sectors that we do. So we do have that that advantage of having an eye on different markets already, to be able to inspire us. But totally agreeing with Henry that wellness, the wellness area is unexploited, and the fact that we have kind of broken the barriers a little bit with Aquascope, invading or integrating multimedia into the water world was quite a challenge, and it became a very successful outcome, both appreciated by the visitors as well as the industry. And so I think we're approaching that area with a lot more confidence now in thinking of what the possibilities could be. And a personal experience, I was just there over the holidays taking a calm moment in a spa, and I saw a projector in a sauna. And I was like, oh, that got me curious. There's definitely a lot of possibilities in the wellness area. I mean, Therma Group has done an amazing job with that spa in Milan, creating that storm in a very small environment. So, I mean, again, it returns to those emotions, those moments that they be collective of personal. But what are these elements that are reaching us as as experiencers, as visitors, as guests, as spectators?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think wellness is a really exciting market, and really, if you think how many luxury, quite high-end hotels around the world with spas, like the market's huge as well. Just integrating into their kind of existing hotel, but then let alone these kind of fantastic standalone attractions that are kind of coming out into this space too. So yeah, watch this space. We'll all become very calm and zen at the next IAPA for sure. But okay, my next question is looking at if you were kind of an operator and planning, your next big thing, what would you define as would be the most successful attraction of the next decade? What will it be about? What will it be the kind of key factors that will define a success?
I think I've mentioned it before. I think really the future belongs to experiences that feel personal. The most successful attractions won't be about, again, it won't be about technology or scale. I think those are going to be layers to it, but it's really about how deeply the attraction or the experience connects with each guest. Experiences, I feel, need to be co-authored by the guests, rather than just delivered to them. I think those ones are really going to stand out. For me, I think thinking about immersive theater experiences like Speak No More, guests aren't just watching, they're shaping the story with their actions. And that, I think that kind of personal engagement is exactly what I think is going to start driving the next generation of attractions.
What do you think, Virginie?
It's a hard question, to be honest, because we don't know what the future holds. And honestly, we've talked about that, the impact of AI in our lives, and it's very hard to see where that will bring us as well. But it could also feel very rapidly obsolete. So again, I have to agree with Henry on relying on the emotions. And I love what you said, Henry, about how the guests are becoming the co-authors, because it's true. It's true. They're at the center of everything that is delivered, and they have a very strong influence. And technology, ideas, all of that revolves around, those moments that we're creating. And it's hard to say what it's going to be, and I'm curious to discover it. But we'll definitely be a part of it. We'll definitely be curious about it and trying, and for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, my final question, we ask everyone at the festival kind of what challenges they're currently facing at the moment. So to ask you both, what's the biggest challenge both your companies are facing?
Yeah, I think this is an easy one for me. I think, you know, in this day and age, we're surrounded by so many tools, you know, that are designed to optimize and replicate and scale. And so I feel that there are very few that actually encourage originality. I'm talking about these tools, these new tools. So I think guests nowadays expect more immersion, you know, and personalization, I think. And projects are moving faster and faster, and obviously under tighter scrutiny. So I think technology is also something that we need to keep a check in, because it's evolving at such a lightning speed, and it's easy for that to let technology drive the experience. So for me, the real challenge is making sure that technology is a tool that helps serve our stories, the emotions, and the guests ultimately. And I think that we need to make sure that imagination always stays front and center.
Mm-hmm. I like that. What about Moment Factory? What's the biggest challenge?
Well, I'll take this more personally. Coming from the film and television industry, as that was my background before transferring over to multimedia and at Moment Factory, what's interesting is that really what we're seeing as a tendency there is that we're revisiting older films, or we're revisiting. So creativity is becoming very fragile, I find, because we're basing ourselves on older successes that we're just refreshing. And so one of our challenges is making sure that we're not only on our side, on the creative side, being constantly renewing our creative ideas, but it's also having guests, visitors, spectators, and clients open to exploring what that could be next, So we're very fortunate to have collaborated with Futuroscope on that aquascope, because they had that level of innovation and curiosity and pushing those boundaries. But we have to all acknowledge that it does take effort, risk, uncertainty, and of course budget. And so all of these components make and shape a little bit the future, and those visionaries, so having that space to allow creativity to continue to evolve and not kind of fall in the trap of just refreshing older ideas.
Do you think the kind of comfiness of older ideas is the biggest driver risk? Is it just too risky nowadays?
Well, definitely risk is a big factor, and going, reverting back to those good, strong successes is something that you can rely on, because there is a history, there is data that you can rely on to know that you're doing it right, or the recipe is right. But sometimes you have to try new recipes to see if it will work or not, but it comes at a cost with risks. Yeah.
Well, like the work at Futuroscope, where all that learning and putting all that technology in a very humid environment probably was quite challenging. But you learned a lot and can take that forward to the industry is really fantastic. So
absolutely, it got our brains thinking, I must admit. But it was, again, great collaboration, just putting all the brains together and seeing how we can do it. And that proved to be successful. Knock on wood, and we're very happy. But we need to take those risks, and I think that's the biggest challenge, allowing ourselves to take those risks.
Exactly. And like you say, having space to think about it and enough time in the day to think about it.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both, Henry, Virginie, for your time, insights into the future. It's a really interesting time for tech, storytelling, products, and all these new verticals. So it's a fascinating sector for sure. So thank you for speaking to us. Thank you everyone at home, or at work, I should say, at the festival for joining us. If you stay tuned, we'll now reveal the winners of the Blue Sky category for the Innovation Awards. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for the session today.
Thank you so much, Ella.
Thank you.
And thanks, Henry. Bye.
Now the winners of the Blue Loop Innovation Awards 2025 Blue Sky category. Third place, Pour Viva's Magic Carpet from Pour Viva. Second place, Access Pro. First place, The Giant from the Giant Company Attractions Limited. Congratulations to all of the winners.